Have you ever sat there staring at an English lesson and thought, why? Why is my brain just not working today? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English with Adam, the podcast where we help you sound more natural, more confident, and more comfortable in English step by step. I'm Adam, and today we're talking about something that almost every English learner goes through. But honestly, people just don't talk about it enough. And that is the frustration of learning English. You know those moments where you feel stuck, like you've studied for weeks, maybe months, and suddenly your brain just says, nope, I'm done. Yep, that feeling. And if you felt that recently, I want you to know something really important right away. Feeling tired is not the same thing as failing. Those are two completely different things. So today, we're going to talk about rest, burnout, quitting, and the process, and how to actually notice the English you have learned instead of only focusing on what you still can't do. Alright, let's get into it. So, first point, frustration is actually a normal part of learning. I think sometimes learners imagine that fluent people just magically improve every single day. Like every day was productive and exciting and full of motivation. But that's absolutely not true. Language learning is messy. Some days you feel amazing, you understand videos like this one, you remember vocabulary, you speak confidently. And then the next day, someone asks you a simple question in English and your brain completely freezes. And you're like, wait, I knew this yesterday. That happens to everybody. The thing is, your brain needs time to organize information. Learning a language is not just about memorizing words. Your brain is building connection, patterns, and habits. And honestly, that takes energy. A lot of energy. Sometimes, when learners say, I can't learn anymore, what that really means is I'm mentally exhausted. That's a difference. Very, very different. And this brings us to the next point, the difference between resting and quitting. Because people confuse these two all the time. Resting means I need a break so I can continue. Quitting means I'm giving up completely. Or this is just not for me, I'm not gonna do it anymore. Those are not the same thing at all. Imagine going to the gym every single day without resting. Eventually, your muscles will get tired, right? You need recovery time. Your brain works the same way too. If you study English for hours every day without relaxing, without resting, eventually your focus gets weaker. You stop enjoying it. Everything starts feeling heavy. And then on top of that, you have something called learner's guilt. It's when learners get guilty. Example, oh, I skipped one day. Oh, I forgot the vocabulary. Or maybe I'm bad at English. No, maybe your brain just needs space to breathe for a second. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your English is actually to stop stuttering for a little while. Maybe you watch a movie in your native language, not in English or the language you're trying to learn. Maybe you just go outside. Maybe you take a quick nap. Maybe you just exist without flashcards for the day, without trying to fit in more words for that day. That's healthy. That's recovery. And honestly, when you come back after resting, you often notice something surprising. Your English feels a little easier again because your brain finally had some time to process everything. Now, here's another big frustration learners have. They focus way too much on what they can't do. And that's actually very powerful because your brain naturally notices mistakes more than progress. You forgot one word and suddenly you think, my English is terrible. Meanwhile, you're ignoring the fact that 6 months ago you couldn't even build a sentence. You couldn't even understand a video like this one, even if you have to read the words in the bottom. Do you know what I mean? Like, learners will say, I'm so bad at English. And then they say that in English. Just by them saying that in English, it's progress. That means they're falling into the habit of thinking in the language they're trying to learn. And they focus too much on the mistakes that they're making. Sometimes we become blind to our own improvement because we're constantly looking at the next level. You can reach one goal and immediately your brain says, okay, now where's the next one? And honestly, that mindset can make learning feel endless. So instead of only asking, what can't I do yet? Try asking, what can I do now that I couldn't do before? That question changes everything. Maybe now you understand podcasts like this one better. Maybe you can order food in English. Maybe you can think in English sometimes. Maybe you understand more jokes. Maybe you can watch videos without subtitles for 5 minutes instead of not being able to understand it at all. Those things matter. Those are real victories. Celebrate them. And here's something I want you to try. Test yourself sometimes. Not to punish yourself, not to prove you're bad, to prove that you've learned more than you think. Because progress feels invisible when you never stop to look backwards. Go back and listen to an old recording of yourself in English, or listen to one of my old videos that you couldn't understand before and now you may be able to understand it better. Or even go to another podcast with somebody else and see if you can understand them when you couldn't understand them before. Read something difficult that scared you 6 months ago. And you notice, wait, this is easier now. That feeling is important. Your brain needs evidence of progress. Otherwise, it only notices the struggle. And look, progress in language learning is rarely dramatic. It's usually tiny little improvements happening quietly in the background. One day you certainly understand a sentence better. One day you remember vocabulary automatically. One day speaking feels a little less scary. Next thing you know, you're thinking in English without noticing, instead of having to translate it in your head before. That's growth, even if it feels slow. Another thing, comparison can absolutely destroy motivation, especially online. You see somebody speaking perfect English after 1 year, and suddenly you think, what's wrong with me? But you don't know their full story. Maybe they studied 8 hours a day. Maybe they lived abroad. Maybe they already spoke a similar language. Maybe they edited the video multiple times to make it sound perfect. You don't know. Your journey is your journey. And honestly, consistency matters more than speed. A person who studies 10 minutes a day for 2 years will usually improve more than someone who studies intensely for 1 month and then quits. Small steps count. Even on difficult days, especially on difficult days. If all you can do today is listen for 5 minutes of English, that still matters. That still keeps the habit alive, and habits are powerful. So before we finish today, I want to leave you with this thought. Learning English is not a straight line. It's more like waves. Sometimes you feel confident. Sometimes you feel frustrated. Sometimes everything clicks. Sometimes nothing makes sense. That's normal. And when your brain feels tired, don't immediately assume you're failing. Maybe you just need rest. Maybe you need encouragement. Maybe you need to look back and notice how far you've already come. Because if you keep trying, if you keep showing up, your English will grow. At different paces, different times, you may learn some things quicker than others, but as you practice more and more, it will get easier and easier, and you'll notice that things come naturally, little by little, day by day. And honestly, that's enough. So, know your limits and focus also on the victories, not just on the defeats. And with that, alright, everybody, that's it for today's episode of English with Adam. If this episode helped you, or if you know somebody who's struggling with motivation in English, share this video with them. Sometimes people just need to hear that they're not alone. And even if they know these things, it's sometimes good to hear somebody else tell you. And remember, resting is not quitting, small progress still counts, and your brain is learning even when it feels slow. Thank you for listening, and take care.